everything that's AI is gold, folks. And sometimes things get a little hyped up. Well, we're going to talk about one of those things at the start of our stock examination today. Bang! Welcome to the Rebel's Edge.
Parts unknown from the land of parts unknown.
Right. Except I don't think Bourdain had to do that himself. I think he had somebody to do the clapper. Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, he could do everything else. I tell you what, Pete, Parts Unknown, No Reservations, all those shows by Bourdain, I can't get enough of them. The guy just, I don't think he had to script it. I think, he could literally go there and just riff on, what it's like to be in the city. And blah, blah, blah. He's just so good, was so good. But those those shows are still out there, folks. And if you haven't enjoyed No Reservation or Parts Unknown or, any of his shows, you should go out there and binge some of those. Especially if you're going to any of the places, any of the cities, and you're a foodie, it'll just make your day. But anyway, welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, folks. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that the markets are open, Pete and I are here. Sometimes it's Mark Lepresti. We're sorry about that. But just kidding, Mark. Just kidding.
Yeah, Mark. No. It's all good.
Thank goodness Mark was there, Pete, Monday, because despite his very busy schedule as the CEO of Market Rebellion, he was able to stand in for me because I had to go out to New York on Delta, which I never do. I like Delta. It's a fine airline and all, but if I fly into JFK ever again, Pete, it will only be helicopter back to the city.
Yeah.
Because I spent 2 hours in traffic getting out of JFK into New York City. I mean, it was almost as long as the flight. It's so stupid. Meanwhile, it's a 7-minute helicopter ride for $195. And before anybody says, wow, $195, you must just spend money like it's nothing. No, it's actually like $120 in an Uber, Pete.
Yeah.
So what's your extra, whatever, hour and 50 minutes worth to you? Mine's worth a little more than that.
Yeah, more than $70.
Well, let's dive in, Pete.
Yep.
Macro Minute. We're going to get PCE tomorrow. We've already talked about that. We're going to get some volatility, which Pete will talk about in Fantastic Futures, from the presidential debate and how that goes. But I'm going to say, Pete, the trade deficit in goods widened to $100 billion in May. Now, our dollar is much higher than it was, which is good in many ways. If the dollar was down, this number would be more like 130 billion. But at least it's 100 billion in May, Pete.
Yeah. Well, my macro is this, John. People are sitting on their hands this week. And why are they sitting on their hands? Well, John just kind of hit the nail on the head. You've got what's coming up tonight, which should be spectacular TV. I mean, I know that there's mics that are going to be turned off and this, that, and the other, but I don't care what side you're on. This ought to be pretty entertaining. And there's just no doubt about that. And you've got, as John just pointed out, the PCE. We've been looking forward to it all week. Monday kind of erased itself on Tuesday. You get back over to Wednesday. Not a whole heck of a lot going on Wednesday. Today, a little bit of activity, but nothing crazy at this point in time. A lot of reactions to earnings. I would say that they are waiting on the PCE. They're also waiting on what happens tonight, because that ought to be up. There should be some fireworks going off on CNN. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. And, it was great, Pete, when several of the CNN hosts were talking about Jake Tapper, and they were saying, you know what, we're not going to let you bash Jake Tapper. And it's like, well, it's not going to be a neutral host, is it? Uh, I mean, the host of this debate, the moderator, if you will, is not very friendly to former president and extremely friendly to the sitting president. But we'll see if the sitting president actually has to sit, Pete, because I don't know if that guy can stand there for very long. They might have to lash him to the podium to get him stand.
Are you saying CNN leans left? Anyway, go on.
Maybe, just a little. All right, let's talk about fantastic futures. Bond yields, they moved up a little bit this week, driven by inflation surprises, Canada and Australia. And by the way, Janet Yellen, once again, Pete, said, you know what? This is a rumor, this inflation. It's not even real. This price inflation's not real. And I'll tell you what's not real, that Columbia gave this woman a graduation certificate that said, that parchment, Pete, that said she graduated with a degree in economics. And she taught at Harvard. Quick lesson, folks. I'm just a guy who went to junior college and then Cornell and University of California and Gustavus Adolphus. So what do I know? But if you've got a fixed amount of goods and a lot more money, that's inflation. The people are going to buy those goods because they have more money, and that's going to push inflation up. That's a little quick lesson for Janet Yellen, because apparently she needed one, Pete.
Well, she looks the part too. That's the best part. Anyway, when it comes to fantastic futures, John, you said it. I'm going to hit a little bit of the volatility index. And as we said, it's been tight. It stays tight. It's somewhere in the 12s, pops up over 13 for about a minute or two, and then pulls right back. But the other thing I want to point out is volumes. And when I say volumes, this week, the pause has been in place, just as we talked about in the macro minute. Take a look at the spider, the SPY volumes. They're at about 50%, a little bit more, but about 50% of the year-to-date volume. Same thing is true with the triple Qs. Why is that? Because I think people are kind of waiting and they want to see what kind of fireworks we have tonight and in front of the PCE. So I think when you look at the volatility index trading somewhere in the mid-12s, pops into 13 here and there, there's a reason why I think at these levels, they are a buy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it carries into next week too, Pete. Mm-hmm. And again, we don't have to wait very long, folks. 24 hours from now, we'll be watching. All right, let's talk about Micron. Pete used to be the options specialist for Micron. And a guy named Simplot, who makes the potatoes, believe it or not, I guess God technically makes the potatoes, Pete, but Simplot grows them. Mm-hmm. And he was the largest potato producer in Idaho. And he also started Micron Technology, MU. Well, their sell-off highlights the risks of some of these expectations around AI because, and Pete and I have said it, this is a great play for AI because dynamic random access memory, DRAM, is one of the things that helps make AI work as quickly and as efficiently as it does, even though energy-wise it's not terribly efficient. So anyway, that's why Micron is moving to the downside. People really had a lot of bets, Pete, that, man, it's going to go straight up. Yeah. Nothing goes straight up, not even NVIDIA. Just look at it from yesterday or from a week ago. These things do correct from time to time, and I guess it's Micron's turn.
Yeah, and when you look at Micron, John, you look at where it's been and where it is. And I mean, we're talking about a stock in the last 52 weeks has been at $60. It's run all the way up to $157. And today, oh my, let's get scared because it's all the way down to $136. Holy smokes. I mean, the reality is this. You've got to have a perfect quarter if you want to continue to move like it has been to the upside. Was it a perfect quarter? Well, to some degree, it was close. You beat on your earnings substantially. You beat on your revenue pretty nicely. I'd say in the ballpark of substantially. But you cannot slip on any kind of guidance at all. And that's kind of what they did. They talked about gross margins and some of that. And that is the reason why Micron actually is pulling back today. It's a pullback of about 3%, folks. This isn't like a 30% drop or anything like that, but it is pulling back, and it makes some sense that it's pulling back because it wasn't the perfect quarter. Had they guided very strong to the upside, John, I think we might be looking at a stock that might even be scratching up towards those 52-week highs. That being said, it's not, and that's for all the right reasons.
Yeah, and keep in mind, folks, all it did was, to Pete's point, very well taken, it pulled back to the June 7th low. Oh my. I mean, in other words, just 3 weeks ago, it was at that level. Beginning of the year, it's an $80 stock. Even after the big sell-off today, Pete, it's up $50 from the beginning of the year. So I don't think we have to have a tag day for anybody that works at Micron, quite frankly.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Levi Strauss. I mentioned that I briefly attended the University of California, Berkeley. My brother graduated from there, our brother Paul. My father graduated from there. Shoot, 2 more of my dad's brothers graduated from there. It's an institution near and dear to our hearts. And yep. Levi Strauss is a big supporter, just like Haas, the guys with the avocados, Pete. The Haas Business School. Well, anyway, Levi Strauss down hard today because they missed quarterly revenue estimates. They did reaffirm top line and bottom line guidance, but they missed revenue, in other words, sales, by a lot, right, Pete?
Yeah. You know, they've got a strong market share. They haven't done as well with women as they need to, and they already they're trying to address that, John. So they missed on the revenue. The revenue, nonetheless. Now, here's where I get a little bit kind of scratch my head and say, hey, wait a minute, though. So they miss on the revenue, and yet the revenue is up 8% year over year. So, you know, I look at this one. We've got another stock we'll be talking about where I think it's a completely different 180 from this one. But, John, year over year, it's up 8% on revenue. I actually think that's pretty impressive. They gave us a bunch of different other numbers that I think were pretty impressive. Down 16% on this kind of a number kind of makes me say, you know what? Maybe this thing's actually viable. Maybe it's an opportunity there. I haven't done anything yet. They got a solid balance sheet. And oh, by the way, they're really stretched, John, because they traded an 18 PE. This is one of those where on a day like today, you start looking at it and you say, maybe this is an opportunity. So I'm looking at it pretty close myself.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, Pete, that there's clearly no monopoly here, but they are a brand that people love. And yes, I know they love True Religion, and I know they love Abercrombie and Fitch, and a host of other companies that make great denim like Gap stores. And Gap stores, really, most of you know this, but Gap stores, Banana Republic, Old Navy, that's all the same thing. That's all under GPS. But they got their name, Pete, because they filled the gap. Because not everybody's a 32 or a 34 or a 36. What about 35? What about 37? Well, that's what Gap store does. And if you didn't know it, now you do. All right. Let's talk, Pete, about Walgreens Boots Alliance, because I think this is one of those companies that Pete was just addressing with his rant right there. They are crumbling. They're down over 23%, Pete, because the retail pharmacy giant reported mixed set of Q3 numbers, lowered their financial outlook, and that is not going to be a popular combination with anybody on the street. Doesn't matter how big a brand you are, because clearly Walgreens is a huge brand. But Pete, in 21, the stock was north of $56 a share. Today, it is down around $11.70 or so. So, I mean, the slide has been like this, as our friend Dennis Gartman would say, from the upper left to the lower right.
Yeah, not good, not good. Well, you called it right, John. I mean, the earnings, they missed on the earnings. That's not a good thing, right? I mean, that's never going to be a good thing. They're actually considering now and acting on the idea of store closures. That's one of their strategic moves that they're trying to do. But to your point, you put out an outlook like they did, and they were going to go at 320 to 335, and actually now they've pulled back a little bit further, and they're going 280 to 295 for the rest of the year. That is not something that's going to sit very well with folks in this market when we have so many other choices out there. And this is actually pulling down CVS a little bit as well. So it's interesting to see how these guys, you know, pandemic people started to love these companies. They really did, because they went there. They hadn't been there in a long time. They had a lot of the things that they wanted. And now we're seeing the exact opposite. Everybody's going back to Walmart. They're going back to Target, and Walgreens and CVS are starting to feel the pain now.
Well, they are shuttering hundreds of stores, folks. Everybody is. One of the reasons for that is theft. I don't think I'm breaking news here when I say that, folks. But just as Target experienced a lot of theft, TGT, you know who didn't really, Pete? Walmart. Walmart didn't. Not to the degree that Target was experiencing, not to the degree that CVS and Walgreens have experienced. And again, I was in New York just a day ago, Pete, and it's so sad to see almost everything in the store behind hard plastic, where somebody has to come over and open up the thing. Even stuff like, you know, $5 things of toothpaste or toothbrushes or whatever, because people just come into these places, grab everything off the shelf, throw it in a trash bag, and go, not even running anymore, just walking out the door, Pete.
Right.
You've seen, I'm sure, those videos of people coming in bicycles into the store.
Yeah.
Just, you know, load the bike up with all this stuff and head out. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's another of the many challenges that these retailers face at a time when consumers are stressed already. And we've seen that time and time again. All right, let's talk about AVAV, Pete, because these guys, this is a drone maker, folks. AVAV, they make those switchblade drones that can go out there and basically on the battlefield destroy almost anything. AeroVironment is the name of the company, and very strong Q4 earnings. But was it enough, Pete? Was it strong enough, AVAV, to cause the stock to lift? Or had all of this already been priced in, and instead people are saying, well, these drones are great, but...
Well, here's the problem I have with this one, and this is the one I wanted to compare to earlier when we were talking about Levi. So in the case of Levi's, John, their revenue actually was up. Now, they missed what everybody's expectations were, but it was actually up 8%. In this particular case, and why this thing is getting clocked today, is because a year ago, they had earnings in this quarter of 99 cents. This go around on this strong number that they put out there, 43 cents. So just let's think about that just for a moment. A year ago, they made almost a buck, and now they're making 43 cents. That alone sounds pretty awful to me, and it doesn't sound like they're doing things right, and it doesn't show me that there's a lot of growth. And yet, the way it was projected to people was, geez, this was a strong beat, man. We got 43 cents. We were looking for far less. Well, you were looking for complete garbage, and you're still garbage. I mean, that's the problem that we're running into here. So understandable why this stock is down significantly. I think it should probably be down even further than it is, quite frankly, today. So I'm staying away from this one. Now, at some point, maybe they can show us that they're able to actually turn this into earnings. But, you know, the declining backlog and some of the other metrics that we were looking at here, I think this is one of those where they're going to have to prove it to us, John, and maybe it's next quarter. Maybe they can do it somewhere within this quarter or next. But I'm sitting here looking at it going, these guys have got a bit of a problem right now, and they have not been able to solve it.
Yep, it's very true, Pete. And, you know, even though you do a great job with drones, and these switchblade drones are, you know, all the rage, especially for the military, there's a lot of drone makers out there, quite frankly. And believe it or not, the government may have to really work with some of these other drone makers like Boeing, because they don't seem to be able to get astronauts back from the space station, Pete. And that's supposed to be a Boeing Starliner or whatever the heck they call it, that's supposed to be taking them back, and apparently it can't. So if the government, they can't afford to let Boeing fail. So I'm thinking some of this is a read through on my part that they got to keep some of these alive, despite the fact that there's really, you know, like I say, very strong support for the Switchblade drones, but other people need to make a living too. Otherwise, they don't have enough money to keep the factories running.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, do we want to jump into some sports, man?
Let's do it.
All right. Everybody knows that Jon and I both played some football. I actually am the one Najarian in the family who played a little bit of basketball in high school, at least. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. And a fan of the NBA, had season tickets with my dad for a really long time for the Timberwolves. Timberwolves are the ones that actually kind of shook things up last night during the draft, Jon. It was the first round. I don't know what the ratings were. My guess would be they were probably okay. And with some of the shakeups, maybe they even got a little bit better. But it was pretty interesting. The Minnesota Timberwolves actually moved all the way up. They grabbed the 8th pick. They stayed at 27, grabbed another pick. And so that was all great. But here's the part I wanted to run by you, and we could maybe kick this around a little bit. Okay. There was one big surprise for me, and it wasn't a huge surprise, but we all know what the NBA has become. The NBA has become a shooters league. They want a lot of points scored. And so you're not seeing as many big men out there as we probably once did. And yet at number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies decided to grab Zach Edey, right? The kid from Purdue. All he did was basically lead Purdue as the number 1 team most of the year last year. He's a scoring machine. He's big in the paint. He's a huge human being, 7'4". And they're going a different direction. And by the way, this guy is a baller, Jon. I mean, he does a really good job without the ball. He's one of these guys with his size, does a great job with screens and everything like that. So it makes Ja Morant, a guy who's a shooting machine for the Memphis Grizzlies, who got into trouble last year or whatever, missed some games. But nonetheless, I think he's going to be smiling with Zach Edey out there to make some blocks and give him an opportunity to have more open shots. He likes to put the ball in the air. He's going to be putting the ball in the air a lot, I would say. So I think that even though he's big and maybe you could say, well, he's a little bit slow, I kind of like this pick here. So what do you think about, was there anybody that surprised you specifically? I mean, you had 3 French guys go in the first 6 picks, by the way. And then you go over to Kentucky, you had 2 different picks in the top 8. So you got France and you got Kentucky, and they're kind of gobbling up all the first 10 picks. Pretty amazing to see that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Pete. And by the way, I think Edey played his way into that 9th pick by scoring like 37, 38 points in the championship game against Connecticut. Yeah, they didn't win. I understand. But he played his face off in that game, Pete. And everybody kind of saw that the big man was not just hype. He really is a good basketball player that deserved the accolades. And 10 rebounds, double-digit rebounds didn't hurt either. All right. I'd say, Pete, in France, there must be something in the water because, like you say, they had the number 1 pick was this kid from France. He went to the Hawks. They had another kid that, let me see, where did he go? To the Hornets. So France has had some pretty outstanding players. The number 1 pick last year, of course, down there with the Spurs. I am very taken with how good those leagues must be over in France, Pete. Now, that kid last year, he was a high school player, I believe. I think he came right out of either high school or the school between high school and college if he was in one of those academies or something. But that kid was extremely young and extremely skinny. These kids aren't quite the same kids, but nonetheless wowed the NBA enough to get first round number 1 and first round number 6 picks. So yeah. One thing that I think the NBA should do, Pete, I really do, and I mean this, they should stop the traveling. They should start calling it, because when you're seeing a guy turn over the ball like this with his hand, I don't know who thinks that's basketball, but it's not. It's a lot more like rugby or football at that point, because you're just running with the ball. Yeah. They're protecting it. You guys cradling it like this, and he's taking 3 steps. And I don't mean pivoting. I mean taking 3 running steps, and then he goes up. Anyway, I'll let you get to our next topic, Pete.
Well, and to your point, by the way, I would say that commissioner of all the different sports, that commissioner is by far the limpest of them all. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he allows all the things that he allows, traveling and carrying the ball and all of that kind of crap. You've had videos out there where you've sent to me where a guy literally might take 5 steps with the ball in his hand, never dribbling it from half court, going in for a slam. It's like, have we just changed the rules? Because I didn't hear about it.
And it's not just LeBron. It's not just LeBron. Yeah, he does it, but it's a lot of other players too. And apparently the refs just are told to let it go, I guess.
It's amazing. All right, last thing we got on here, John. I've been watching a lot of these Olympic trials. They're really exciting because basically we know when it comes to track and field, the U.S. is pretty dominant. We also are really dominant somewhere else, gymnastics. And right here in Minnesota today, we got the Olympic trials going on in 1 hour, starting right over there, John. I'm excited for it. Actually, I'm going to go down to it. I've become friends with a lot of the guys on the gymnastics side of things at the University of Minnesota, which, by the way, our athletic director decided to cut a bunch of programs here at the University of Minnesota during the pandemic. One of them was men's gymnastics, which we've always been extremely good at. People may or may not know that, but we have been, and women's gymnastics. So he cuts the men, right? Doesn't save a whole heck of a lot of money. So they go out there and say, the hell with it. We're going to be a club sport. All they did was go undefeated and won the national title this year. So I just wonder sometimes, what are these folks thinking? I think we cut 8 sports, John, and saved $1.5 million. Why wouldn't we have just gone to a couple of the folks in the business community here in Minnesota and say, you know what, guys, we need a little bit of money. Can you give us a little something, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it isn't that difficult. I can tell you that. So Simone Biles is here. She is the Michael Jordan. She is the GOAT of gymnastics. And all you've got to do is talk to anybody in the world of gymnastics, and they will tell you she is the best all time. Nobody's even close. It's one of those kind of things. So she's going to be there. But there's somebody else who's a local gal who is unbelievable as well. She's fun to watch. Suni Lee. Now, she's right from St. Paul, Minnesota, John. She's been unbelievable. She won in the Olympics 4 years ago. She's going for it again. She's phenomenal. So we've got her. We've got Grace McCallum. We also have a guy named Shane Wiskus, who's all Minnesota people, because we are not the state of hockey, which we like to say, because I think you got to win at least one Stanley Cup to be the state of hockey. We've never won one, whether it's the Wild or any of our previous teams. Nobody has got it. The North Stars are great, but then they went to Dallas. Anyway, so when you look at these people and what we've got, this is going to be really, really exciting. They're filling up the Target Center, John, enough that they're going to go to Target Field and have huge TVs so people can be able to watch from around the stadium itself. So a lot of things going on downtown Minneapolis. Should be pretty cool. And I think it's going to be great because I think whatever team we put together will be the best team in the world to compete in the Olympics.
Well, what's really surprising to me, Pete, is not just because he's my brother, folks, but exactly what Pete described. The job of the athletic director of any college, any university, is not just to penalize players, coaches, whatever, for inappropriate behavior. It is to make sure that those programs stay relevant and continue. And for $1.5 million, the fact that they cut gymnastics, and yet the University of Minnesota goes out and wins anyway, Pete, is a testament to how good those athletes are and what a poor job that athletic director is doing. I don't care. I don't even know who it is. I know you know him or her. I don't even know. But I know they're doing a crappy job, because if they were doing a good job, they would go out and they'd knock on the door of Best Buy. They'd knock on the door of 3M. They'd knock on the door of Medtronic or any of the other top 50 Fortune 500 companies that are up there in Minneapolis and say, come on, man. Look, and now you're filling up the Target. I mean, it's not called the Metro. What is it?
Bank Target Center and Target Field. Yeah.
Target Center. So now you're filling that up, and you don't think you've got enough support to get those gymnasts $1.5 million so they can actually have a fully funded team.
Yeah.
It seems just stupid, but that's the way a lot of these administrators are at colleges and universities, and they shouldn't be in those positions, Pete, if they can't do the basic math, just like Janet Yellen shouldn't be the Treasury Secretary if she doesn't know that pushing a whole bunch more money at the fixed number of goods means that the price of those goods is going up.
Yeah. Well, and it's sad, John, because there is a dynasty here. I'll just give you one last thing about why I brought up gymnastics, why I'm excited. John Roethlisberger is a 3-time Olympian, 92, 96, 2000. He's been part of the program. Marie Roethlisberger, his sister, 1984 Olympics. Their father, Fred, who was the head coach at Minnesota from 71 to 04, went to the 1968 Olympics. So when I say there's a bit of a dynasty of what we've got and the people within this state and the folks that actually compete for the University of Minnesota gymnastics, men's and women's, it's pretty dominant. And to get rid of that, now, by the way, just so everybody knows, it wasn't just 1.5 million, John, that we saved for gymnastics. It was all 8 of the sports that they got rid of. So it's one thing if it was $1.5 million here, $1.5 million, then it becomes a little bit, but you still got, and you added a lot of names, but you got Polaris, you got Hormel. There's a heck of a lot of names within a 50-mile circumference of what we see here at the University of Minnesota. A lot of companies that are, they are unbelievably large, and I think they could have written a check.
Yep, and I think they would have if they were asked properly.
Yep.
Again, it's not a demand, it's an ask, but there's a lot you could do for them in terms of exposure. And, obviously, if it's so popular that they need to go to bigger and bigger venues for this, that kind of says it all.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, we will be tuned into the debate tonight. It should be a very interesting, lively event.
Volatile.
And we hope all of you enjoyed the banter. Remember, we do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be back Monday. I'll see you then, Pete. Have a good one, everybody.
See you guys.